Welcome back to Deconstructing Directing. I'm Andrew Robler, the founder and archivist here, and we're continuing our journey through Act 4, the text, playwrights, and dramaturgy, where we've been exploring how directors interpret, adapt, and collaborate with written material. In Scene 5, we examined what it means to work with a playwright, how to build healthy, creative relationships with living writers in the room. But what happens when that writer isn't there? That's what we are unpacking in this scene. How to direct new or developed work without the playwright present. Sometimes that absence is literal, such as when the playwright has passed away or the script was discovered unfinished. Other times it's logistical. The playwright is living but unavailable or has chosen to step back from the process. And sometimes it's philosophical, such as when we're staging a new play that's still evolving or that we're reconstructing from fragments, drafts, or oral histories. In all of these situations, the director becomes the steward of the playwright's intent and the guardian of the play's next life. And that creates an immediate tension between two artistic obligations: integrity, which is honoring what the playwright has already given us, and interpretation, which helps us to shape what's not yet on the page. Without the playwright in the room, that balance can easily tip too far in either direction. Overemphasizing integrity can trap us in reverence, afraid to take interpretive risks, while overemphasizing interpretation can turn our directing into authorship, crossing the line from collaboration into something else. The question then is not just what we do in the playwright's absence, but how we listen. Because absence isn't the same as silence. It's an invitation to listen more carefully to the text, to the context, and to the story that's still trying to speak. That's where we're heading in this scene. We'll explore the many forms that absence can take and why it matters, how to respect and represent an absent author, strategies for interpreting unclear or unfinished work, and ways to balance innovation and interpretation with integrity. As always, you'll find reflection worksheets and handouts in the usual spot below the video on our website, including one called the Absent Author Worksheet, which helps you track your own interpretive decisions as you move from first read to opening night. Let's start by grounding ourselves in the landscape of absence and why it's one of the most quietly powerful challenges a director can face, because not all absence is created equal. Sometimes the playwright's absence is literal. They've passed away, or the piece was found unfinished, perhaps in a notebook or as an early draft left behind. And in these cases, there's a poignancy to our role as directors. We become custodians of both their words and their memory. There's no one to email, no notes to take back to the author. The text becomes a kind of archaeological artifact, and our job is to excavate it carefully without rewriting history in the process. Other times, the absence is logistical. The playwright may be alive, but unavailable, perhaps touring, teaching, or simply not interested in returning to an earlier piece. Maybe the play was submitted to a festival and selected without their ongoing participation. Maybe we're working with a playwright who prefers to hand the piece off after a certain point, trusting others to bring it to life. Or, most likely, we're producing a published play that is being managed by a rights management company. In this case, the absence of the playwright is not neglect, it's delegation. There's also philosophical absence, when the text itself resists singular authorship. Devised works, community-generated scripts, and collaborative pieces often enter the world with blurry authorship. Who, in those cases, is the playwright? It's the collective, the editor, the facilitator who wrote down the words. In these cases, absence doesn't mean missing, it means diffused. The author's voice has become many voices, and our job as directors is to hear them all without flattening them into one. And finally, there's temporal absence, such as when we're directing a play that's new to us but was written in another era or context. The playwright's cultural vocabulary might no longer match our own. Their metaphors may no longer resonate or may even harm. The playwright is absent not in body, but in time. Bridging that gap requires both research and empathy. So why does all of this matter? Because the type of absence changes the type of listening we must do. When absence is literal, we listen for intention through form, structure, and rhythm. When it's logistical, we listen for permission to take ownership while still honoring their authorship. When it's philosophical, we listen for balance, ensuring that no single voice dominates what was meant to be plural. And when it's temporal, we listen for translation, how to make meaning travel across decades or cultures without distortion. This is not just academic, it's emotional. Absence carries weight. a playwright's absence leaves space that wants to be filled, usually with our ideas, our aesthetics, and/or our egos. The challenge is to resist the temptation to fill that space too quickly. We often think of directing as adding things like layers, choices, movement, and tone. But in the absence of a playwright, directing often starts with subtraction, removing noise, assumption, and impulse from our perspective until what remains is the text itself, bare and unadorned, ready to be heard again. If we can start from that kind of listening, absence becomes less of a problem to solve and more of a landscape to navigate, with integrity as our compass and interpretation as our map. When a playwright isn't in the room, it's easy to start thinking of the play as ours. After all, we're the ones staging it, interpreting it, shaping every moment that an audience will see. But directing a play without its author present is not an act of ownership, it's an act of guardianship. To respect an absent author doesn't mean treating the script as sacred text immune to interpretation. It means recognizing that the words on the page are the remains of a creative conversation that we've entered late. The playwright has already done their part of the dialogue. Now it's our turn to respond respectfully. And respect begins with curiosity, not certainty. So let's explore 5 principles that can guide this curiosity in an effective manner. First, consider intention before assumption. Every strange line break, every silence, every half-formed thought deserves to be treated as if it was chosen for a reason. That reason might not be immediately apparent, but I don't understand it is not the same as it doesn't mean anything. Our first responsibility is to explore why something might be the way it is before we start changing it to fit our expectations. We can ask ourselves, what purpose could this ambiguity serve? What emotion or rhythm might this moment carry that isn't obvious on first read? What happens if I trust the text instead of correcting it? Often, the very thing that feels awkward or unclear in early rehearsals is what becomes the play's most distinctive heartbeat once it's lived in performance. 2. Research the playwright's context, not just their content. Respect also means taking the time to understand who this playwright was or is and where this work came from. This might include reading their other plays, essays or interviews, studying the time and place in which the work was written, learning what artistic or political movements they were responding to, or tracing patterns in their voice, what imagery they return to, what rhythms they favor, what emotional landscapes they inhabit. This kind of research isn't about becoming an expert. It's about building empathy for someone who can't speak for themselves in our rehearsal room. We're trying to understand their sensibilities so that we can make choices that align with their spirit, not just their syntax. 3. Use the text as your first and final authority. Even when secondary sources are available, the script itself should remain our most reliable teacher. We've already discussed some of this in previous scenes, but as a reminder, here are some common clues that the text can offer us. Repetition and variation. What words or motifs keep returning? Structural symmetry. Where does the rhythm tighten or loosen? Stage directions. What do they reveal about tone, pace, or world building? These patterns form a kind of authorial fingerprint. They are what's left of the playwright's voice. Treat them as breadcrumbs rather than handcuffs. 4. Practice interpretive humility. It's tempting to fill in the blanks, to finish what feels incomplete, but respect often means restraint. The goal is not to create the version of the play we wish existed, but to bring to life the one that does, even when that means living with discomfort or ambiguity. This is where reckless kindness comes in again, not as niceness, but as radical consideration. To direct with reckless kindness towards an absent playwright is to ask over and over, would this choice honor their voice, even if it's not the voice I would have used? Sometimes that question will slow us down, but it will also save us from arrogance. And 5, make our process transparent. Finally, respect means accountability. If you must make changes, cuts, line edits, or interpolations, and you are legally permitted to do so, remember that most licensed plays do not allow changes to be made without written permission. Document them. Keep an edits log. Note what was altered, why, and how you justified it. Share it with your designers and actors so the whole team understands where interpretation begins and invention takes over. This isn't about red tape and bureaucracy. It's about ethics. Transparency builds trust, and trust is the foundation of integrity. Our job isn't to rescue the play from its creator, it's to listen so deeply that the absent author feels somehow present. Now let's shift focus and talk about incomplete work. Every director dreams of a clean, complete script, but sometimes the pages that land in your hands are unfinished, inconsistent, or incomplete. Maybe the playwright passed before finishing revisions. Maybe the play was discovered in fragments, or maybe it was written as part of a devised process that was never fully recorded. Whatever the case, as a director, we're standing in the strange in-between, something that is a play, but not yet a production-ready one. This is where the director's artistry becomes something closer to translation than interpretation. First, we need to understand that an unfinished play isn't broken, it's open. The gaps, contradictions, and absences within it are not necessarily mistakes to be fixed. They may be opportunities for discovery. We tend to think of ambiguity as the enemy of clarity, but sometimes ambiguity is the meaning. What truths might a gap be pointing toward? What emotional or thematic rhythm might the missing piece suggest? What happens if we stage the absence itself? So here are 3 broad strategies for handling unclear or incomplete text. None is right for every situation, but each offers a different philosophy of engagement. The first is completion. We fill in missing material, write connective tissue, or construct new scenes based on research or inference. This approach demands sensitivity to tone and structure. It can be powerful when the gaps are small or purely logistical, but it can also risk ventriloquizing the author if done without restraint. Does the addition clarify, or does it overwrite? Second is illumination. We stage the incompleteness transparently. A missing scene might be acknowledged through narration, projection, or silence. An unassigned line might become a choral moment. This approach turns absence into theatricality, inviting the audience to bear witness to the incompleteness itself. What does it mean to watch a story that knows it's unfinished? And finally, conversation. Instead of filling or exposing the gaps, we build a conceptual frame that allows both present and absence to exist. You might juxtapose fragments of the script with found text, music, or physical imagery that resonates thematically without pretending to finish the play. How can we respond to this work the way that one artist might respond to another's painting? Not by touching the canvas, but by writing a poem beside it. Each of these approaches requires deep honesty about your intent. Are you trying to serve the play or save it? Because those are not the same thing. When something feels unclear, we often rush to repair it. That impulse is rooted in care because we want the audience to understand, but it can quickly slide into control. So instead of asking, what's missing, we might ask, what would happen if we treated what's here as enough? It's not a lazy question, it's a recklessly kind one. It reframes our role from finisher to listener, from creator to caretaker. And remember, even if the playwright isn't present, we're not alone. We can invite our team, including actors, designers, and dramaturgs, into the interpretive process and ask them to help us listen. Sometimes the best solutions emerge when someone outside our own tunnel vision notices what the play is already trying to do. And if you must add text or structure, workshop those additions transparently. Keep track of what's yours and what's the playwright's. Future directors deserve to know where your hand ends and the author's begins. There's a strange beauty to working with a play that isn't done. It asks something of us that finished works rarely do. Faith. Faith that the fragments are enough. Faith that the story knows where it's going, even if we don't. Faith that the absence can hold meaning. Up to this point, we've been talking about integrity as an artistic and moral compass. But when we're directing, especially without the playwright present, integrity isn't just ethical, it's also legal. Many directors stumble into trouble not because of bad intent, but because of a blurry understanding of what can and can't be changed. In Scene 4, we review copyright and what can and can't be changed, but especially when we're talking about absent playwrights, we need to explore a bit more about public domain works. Once a work enters the public domain, you're legally free to adapt or alter it as you wish. But legal freedom doesn't erase ethical responsibility. If you're staging an unfinished play or fragments of a deceased playwright's work, we might ask ourselves, are my changes clearly distinguishable from the original text? Have I credited the source and contextualized my additions? Am I using the playwright's reputation to legitimize my own invention? Just because we can rewrite Shakespeare doesn't mean that we should, unless the act of rewriting serves a clear, honest purpose. When in doubt, name what you're doing. a new adaptation, inspired by, freely based on. Transparency is not only respectful, it's good dramaturgy. Similarly, in ensemble devised or collectively written projects, authorship can be shared or diffused. That can make permissions more complex, but it also makes credit even more important. If the playwright's absence stems from a larger group process, clarify who retains rights to the text before rehearsals begin. If you're adapting workshop material created by others, obtain written consent to use or modify their contributions. When the authorship is unclear, the director often becomes the default authority by virtue of taking the project forward, which can create tension later. Protect everyone involved by documenting credit early and often. Theater is built on trust. A playwright trusts a director with their words, a director trusts actors and designers with their choices, the audience trusts everyone to mean what they say. You lose that and the art collapses. To direct in the absence of the playwright, then, is to live in that trust, to hold it carefully, name your boundaries clearly, and choose integrity even when no one is watching. Because when the playwright's not in the room, you become the keeper of the covenant. As always, this content is truly and completely 100% free to you and will be as long as I can help it. That said, if you find it helpful and are able to support it financially, please consider joining my Patreon, which will allow you to set up a small monthly donation and earn fun perks like stickers and more for helping to support this project financially. Even just $5 a month makes a huge difference. I'll see you again when you're ready to dive into the rest of Act 4, and until then, I challenge us all to be recklessly kind.